Good morning, everybody. This is Rudy coming at you live from Palm Beach in Florida. I'm joined by a special guest today, Adam, who is going to introduce himself in a minute. It is February. It's the 24th of the month. We're almost at the end of February. And as most of you know, I've just returned from the Mining Indaba Investment Conference in South Africa. And I was so impressed by the sort of parallel event hosted by One-to-One Group that I thought I would invite them to our channel so that they can inform our community members as to what it is they do and how they work. So with that sort of very brief introduction, I'd like to say welcome to Adam. And maybe, Adam, you can quickly introduce yourself and tell us where you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely, Rudy. Thanks so much. And of course, delighted to speak with you and share some insights with your network about one-to-one investment events. So essentially, we are part of the wider Hive family as well as Mining Indaba, but we have a slightly different model and sit in a different vertical. We deal in the metals and mining sector, and we connect investors from everyone from institutional funds down to family offices, private equity, streaming royalties and alternative finance models, but anyone that's placing capital into the sector. And we connect them with the CEOs of the mining companies, typically the growth stage, and mostly junior mining companies. They could be earlier stage explorers that've got a hot property, or they could be larger producing companies with billion-dollar plus market caps. But we tend to deal with the growth stage companies that investors are really trying to get their capital into to see that capital appreciation and also to see the project through to development as well. Of course, the world needs more metals and mining, more production in order to meet energy transition targets and goals, which we can touch on later. But coming back to one-to-one, very simply, we connect the mining company CEOs with the investment community, and we do this through physical events held throughout the year. We run 12 in-person events, and you can't buy a ticket, but if you are an investor and you are interested to attend, meet the CEOs, hear company pitches, updates, network, and generally absorb what's going on in the industry, you can come to one of these shows. And we hold them in Hong Kong twice, London twice, Cape Town, of course, that's pegged onto the Indaba Week and the larger Mining Indaba event. And then we also have smaller shows in Singapore, Sydney, Melbourne, and Las Vegas, of course. Oh, and I should mention New York twice a year as well, which is sort of a mid-sized show for us. So we're well covered, and I think that's symptomatic of investment community and also the mining community around the world. These projects are scattered all around the world with CEOs and headquarters based in many jurisdictions, and they come to market their projects through our platform as well. So as I mentioned, it's a very streamlined platform representing the project pitches and the investment community.
Thank you, Adam. So I started off the discussion by saying coming at you live from Palm Beach in Florida, but I should mention that Adam is actually in London in the UK. But I just want to share my brief experience, obviously dating back to the Mining Indaba, which was in Cape Town in South Africa just a couple of weeks ago now. I went to the Mining Indaba basically with the intent of spending most of my time at the Indaba and, listening to some probably boring speeches by politicians and people like that. But at the same time, Adam and his group was running the parallel event, which I was not familiar with prior to going to the Mining Indaba. It was actually located just a couple of miles away from the conference center where the Indaba was in a sort of another facility. And they had a little shuttle bus running to and fro between the two venues. And on the first morning I was at the Mining Indaba, I actually caught the shuttle bus to one-to-one because I had some meetings scheduled for later that day. And once I was exposed to the one-to-one format and the venue and the people at the venue, I ended up spending most of my time at the one-to-one venue and group. And just sort of on a related note, some of the CEOs from mining companies that Adam mentioned briefly, have actually agreed to also come on the channel and talk to our investors. And the very first one coming up on Monday, so after this weekend, is Daniel Major from GoviX. And GoviX is a small cap uranium company out of Canada. And I've covered GoviX a couple of times before, but I had the opportunity to meet Daniel at the Mining Indaba. But really what happened in practice for me was, and Adam, thanks to you guys, I ended up meeting with about 20 CEOs in a sort of semi-formal setting. And Adam can explain this better than what I can. But I met with representatives of these mining companies at the one-to-one conference, and maybe it would be worthwhile for you just to sort of share how that works in practice. So someone like me arrives and finds what?
Thanks, Rudy. So the format is essentially where mining CEOs have their fixed meeting position. And over the 2 days, they'll have a schedule of meetings in which one-to-one help build in advance of the event. So it's pre-screened. So it's not quite like a speed dating where you don't know who you're meeting and you have to meet everyone. You're really only matched and paired with projects that are of interest to you as an investor. So if, for instance, you like the uranium narrative and you want to meet with GoviX or a similar company that's exploring for uranium assets or developing them across the world, we would pair you with that company at a certain time slot that fits both your schedules throughout the day. And it's a very much sort of concierge-driven service. So it's quite easy as an investor to turn up and have your predetermined meetings. But on the top of that, you can arrange meetings on site. There's a whole host of companies. I think we had 111 junior miners at the Cape Town event that just passed. And London, of course, is also another big show for us. And our other shows are sort of around the 70 to 80 company mark. So over 2 days, you can imagine if you have 15 to 20 meetings as an investor, you're certainly worn out, but you have a fantastic schedule and a fantastic amount of exposure to the CEOs of the companies directly. And the meetings are every half hour, they rotate, and they're for 30-minute slots, which is quite a good amount of time to digest and get into a project and make that initial connection if it's a new introduction.
Yeah, so just from a personal point of view, how it works in practice from my side of the equation, and this is basically for the benefit of our audience here, the comment that Adam just made about pairing you with like a junior miner or a company that might be of interest to you is sort of managed at the back end through their technology as well. So what happens is I have the ability as an attendee to send a mining company a request for a meeting. And similarly, the mining company can send me a request for a meeting, obviously, because they can see the attendees to the conference. And then Adam's software at the back end manages this for you, kind of arranges the calendar for you. You can add these calendar meetings then to your Google Calendar or whatever it is that you're using, so that your agenda and your meetings are actually populated in the calendar for you. So by the time someone like me arrives, I effectively have a printout, or otherwise they'll even give me one to say these are your meetings for the day. And then I know exactly where I'm going, during the day as I attend these 30-minute meetings. In addition to that, many great conversations of even sometimes greater value, because they're less canned and more sort of off the cuff, happen over a cup of coffee or a lunch sandwich or something like that. In this particular instance in Cape Town, sort of in the garden setting of the venue where they were hosting the conference. So when you have a break, so perhaps you might have 5 or 8 or 10 meetings booked, and there might be some 30-minute slots or intervals in between where you have nothing booked. Well, if you simply go and relax and get yourself a cup of coffee, the guy sitting next to you might be the chief operating officer or an investor relations person from a mining company or someone with similar interests to yourself. And I actually had meetings that were kind of just scheduled off the cuff by people that I know who were attending the one-to-one group sessions, saying, "Are you booked right now?" And I said, "No, I'm not." So they're like, "Come with me. We're meeting with so-and-so." So even the informal part of the discussion was very valuable. Adam, I just want to take you back to the start where you mentioned the different venues located globally where you have conferences. Now, some of these conferences are in person and some of them are virtual, right? Or is that not correct?
No, that is correct. We did quite well in the pandemic to continue making connections virtually. One-on-one in principle can be held virtually as long as you've got a good back end, a lot of the right connections made. And so we've kept on with that, not as frequent, but we do them every quarter. So one-to-one on global online precious metals is coming up on the 22nd and 23rd of March. If someone was perhaps new to one-to-one, that would be an interesting entry point where you wouldn't have to travel to get involved. It's not quite the same as the in-person, as you mentioned, and as you described, that incidental, that additional networking or the additional meetings you can get once you're there are second to none. But the online does serve a good function for its efficiency. I think we've all learned, as we're talking now, the benefits of video connection. So yes, we host 4 online a year and then 12 in person a year. And so the next shows that are coming up in person are Las Vegas on the 28th and 29th of March and Hong Kong on the 29th and 30th of March, obviously overlapping, but different teams and different sets of companies in the hemispheres.
Okay. So, for the people on our channel, they kind of affectionately or sometimes not affectionately refer to me as Mr. Oxy, because that's how I started off introducing them to Occidental Petroleum when, half the investor community thought Occidental Petroleum was going to go bankrupt and the other half thought this is an opportunity to make money. And I just happened to inadvertently find myself on the right side of that equation. But the concept for me to actually attend the Mining Indaba and thereby getting connected to one-to-one group was actually an attempt originally by me to look at diversifying my portfolio, which I've shared with our community often, which is predominantly energy and then to a lesser degree financials. So I don't really have strong positions or material positions in mining type stocks, and that's one of the reasons why I went to the Mining Indaba. One of the other reasons why I attended is because I have or had, to a degree anyway, a blind spot in relation to rare earth minerals and some of the sort of, let's call them newer to me metals like lithium, for example, or nickel. And some of these metals that are required for EV batteries and things like that, I didn't know too much about it. In fact, the only area where I had a sort of a level of comfort was uranium. So I exited the one-to-one meetings with these individual CEOs and COOs or whatever their titles were, with a much broader knowledge of some of these rare earth minerals, metals, and very specifically things like nickel and lithium, tungsten, etc., where previously I had arguably very little or even zero knowledge in terms of what the macro thesis is for investing in some of these companies. So, from that point of view, Adam, I was grateful for the opportunity, because even though it's sort of referred to as a general Mining Indaba and mining conference, including the one that you said is coming up in Las Vegas very, very shortly. Mining is not mining in the sort of traditional concept of people thinking of precious metals, gold and silver. Of course, there's a strong focus in that regard, but it includes mining, which includes everything I just mentioned. And for the majority of people, if I may be this bold, there's generally a good sort of sense of whether you want to invest in gold or silver or the sort of traditional precious metals groups, but there's a wealth of knowledge that can be gained by connecting to some of these junior miners and listening to their story, getting to grips with the investment thesis and the narrative and whatever is related to that particular company. So from that point of view, it was very beneficial to me as an attendee.
Excellent. That's really, really good to hear that as well. The proof of the work comes off. And also in the conferences, we do have investors and analysts sharing presentations, perhaps a commodities overview that looks at all of the metals that you mentioned in the battery metals complex for a sort of outlook on where prices might be heading and what those supply and demand drivers are. I find it fascinating to have those touch points myself, but it's very much an information gathering exercise for investors at every level. And for something as complex as the elements that go into rare earths, there is a lot of information needed. And these companies are some of the sort of most promising companies that are going to be providing the critical minerals, particularly in the developed world, as we think about US-China trade wars, some of the Inflation Reduction Act supporting investment into renewables and wind turbines and solar power, for instance, 5 tons of copper needed per wind turbine. So where's that copper coming from? Well, let's go and speak to a junior miner that's got a promising project, for instance. And so that whole supply chain piece is coming closer together now with this whole need to decarbonize and look at energy sources when the world's clearly in certain regions in a bit of an energy crisis. So we champion all of the commodities within the metal space, and it's very interesting to see how prominent these sort of energy transition, battery, and critical metals that you mentioned are coming into the fore and into the need for society and for business now.
Adam, on a sort of non-related topic, does anyone have the ability to sign up to your Insights newsletter that you email, or are these your accredited investors only, or how does that work?
No, we had grown, and we have a portal called the Assay, which is essentially when you send your materials off to the assay lab to get assessed, that's where it'll happen. But really, it's a knowledge portal for profiling metals and mining businesses, but also tying together online everything that we do in person at the shows, whether it's the content from the presentations, whether it's an analysis piece that someone's recorded in advance through a webinar or a discussion like this, and really becoming a go-to place for some qualitative information about some of the elements that we've talked about, some of the metals or some of the businesses or some of the funds that are investing into the space. We send out a weekly newsletter, the Assay Weekly, whereby you can subscribe to it. So if you just simply search for the Assay and sign up that way, there's a wealth of information that can be gleaned there, and it's akin to our events business as well.
So anyone can sign up to the Assay, the weekly newsletter, is that correct?
Correct, yes. Sorry, so I should say it's available for everyone and anyone who wants to.
So then maybe what I'll do is I'll add a link to the weekly newsletter in the description underneath this video, and then people can just click on that and sign up, and it will just help to get the greater community informed in terms not only of what you do, but also what's going on in the marketplace at a macro level.
Yeah, absolutely. Really would appreciate that. That would be great. And as I say, that's the sort of knowledge piece that we help to continue 365 throughout the year, whereas the events are a little bit more intensive and on that fixed date. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't have any further questions for you. So if there are any other comments or anything that you wanted to add, you are welcome to do so. Otherwise, from my side, we can wrap.
No, really, that was excellent. And thanks so much for taking time to chat with me about one-to-one and give us the promotion. So I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Adam. It's good to have you in studio, and best of success with the next one. The next one coming up is in Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 28th and 29th of March. And
okay.
Hopefully to see yourself or other interested investors there.
Yeah, best of success and safe travels, and we'll be connecting soon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.